Kia ora everyone, and welcome to the summer season of Pod Uni. My name is Tama, and I'm the student producer of the summer season. In this episode, Colin interviews renowned Kiwi author and playwright Whiti Hereaka. Their discussion ranges from how to write for effective vocal delivery to the anatomy of a story, all important points for an aspiring podcaster to consider. Whiti recently received the Acorn Award, one of the most prestigious fiction prizes in Aotearoa, for her novel Kurangaituku. It tells the Māori legend of Hatupatu and the Birdwoman from the perspective of Kurangaituku, the Birdwoman. The craziest thing about it is, you can start the book from either end. Once you reach the middle, you flip it over and read from the other end. It's unlike anything I've ever read before, and I can't recommend checking it out enough. Over to Whiti and Colin.
Tēnā koutou, ko tongariro tōku maunga, ko tauponi tia te moana, ko Ngāti Tūwhare toa, me te aroa, me tuharangi, me Ngāti Whakaue, me Ngāti Tuma Tāwera, me Tainui, me Pākehā ahau. Ko Whiti Hereaka, tōku ingoa. Kia ora, I'm Whiti Hereaka. I am a writer, and I'm happy to be here.
Tēnā koe, Whiti.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. So, your latest novel.
Yes. Kurangaituku.
Kurangaituku.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I like how you said that.
Oh, I don't know if I say it as well as you do.
Kurangaituku.
It is fun to say.
It is fun to say.
It's really delightful to say. It has a lot to say, that novel, about the work and that stories do, the sort of power that stories can have in the world.
Yeah.
And so I'd be curious to know if you could tell us a little bit about how you understand the power of stories and what stories can do, the work.
Yeah, that's a big question and a good question. So I guess part of the novel, Kurangaituku, is telling the story of herself to invent herself. So I think storytelling is an important part of how we tell our own identities to the world. So in Kurangaituku and in the novel beforehand that I wrote called Legacy, both of them are really concerned with story sovereignty, about who gets to tell their own stories and the way they tell their own stories. So I think it's really important that we have our stories and that we get to tell them in the way that we want to tell them. Also, I guess, in terms of importance of stories and how they are, Kurangaituku is an attempt to sort of decolonise Māori stories. It's based on a pūrākau that I grew up with, Hatupatu and the Birdwoman, but from her point of view. But the story I grew up with was written by a Pākehā man. So it was one of the read copies of Hatupatu and the Birdwoman. So I read it from that lens rather than from a Māori lens. So again, it's that story sovereignty kind of idea. So I wanted to retell the story in a way that was closer to oral storytelling in the novel. So if you look at the novel, you can approach the novel from either side, and you can start from either side. So you read towards the middle, which is the end, which is not the end. So it's got this weird structure. If you could see me in the studio, I'm moving my hands in circles, but you can't. But just believe me, that's what I'm doing. So part of the reason I wanted to do that structure is to emulate oral storytelling. So say you went to somewhere to hear a story back in the day, back before, settlers had come to New Zealand. Chances are the storyteller wouldn't just start at the beginning of a cycle. So Maui stories, they might not start with Maui being born. They would instead look at the audience, look at what's the context of the day, and decide to tell a story based on what was happening at that time. So a story that would help people perhaps at that time to find a lesson that they might need to learn, or something that happened during the day that might have inspired part of the story. So yeah, there'd be a bit more fluid in the way that you tell a story, not strictly linear. So I wanted to do that in this novel as well. So looking at how we might tell stories in a way that's from more of a te ao Māori lens than our classical, she says with, you can't see it as well, doing inverted commas or bunny ears, a classical way of telling a story in the Western canon.
Yeah, certainly. That's powerful. Tell me about story sovereignty and how that aligns with or contrasts with what you're describing there as kind of a Western mode of storytelling, which has certain ideas about linearity, but also certain ideas about authorship and ownership and one version of a story, or what do we do with multiple versions? So how does that sovereignty differ from or align or not with
Yeah, I guess I've been pushing back a bit when people have been interviewing me and saying, is this the story? Is this kurangai tuku, like in big, bold capital letters? And no, it's just a version of it. Even the way I've spelt her name is different. So there are people that have kuru ngai tuku rather than kura ngai tuku. So yeah, there are different versions of her story. I'm not the definitive storyteller of this story, nor that I wouldn't want to be. I think my job as a writer is to invite conversation, and I talk about that quite a lot in the book. Well, Kurangai Tuku talks about that. Ooh, sliding in between me and her again. That a story doesn't exist just with the storyteller, that it is in a space between you and the audience. So you need an audience. You need that space between us. There's an understanding between us. I like that kind of idea that a story, when it's being told, is being reinterpreted by the listener or the reader, and it becomes their story too.
Yes.
So they bring everything that they know to the reading of the story. So of course it's going to be a different story from what someone else read. That's why I think we have these great discussions about whether good books are good or bad. It's because we've brought a whole bunch of our expectations, our education, our knowledge of that story to the story. So I think that's a really exciting part about being a storyteller.
Yeah.
Is that you don't know what someone else will bring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have this beautiful kind of metaphor in the book about threads, that each telling of a story is a kind of thread, and woven together they can be a rope, and that rope can be a noose around a monster's neck, monster in air quote, bunny ears, or that rope can do other things, right?
Yeah.
And, can you explain how that metaphor works and how you think about that as a storyteller, a part of a conversation? You said. Yes,
I like the idea of many tellings of a story all contributing to like a big telling of it. So we learn different things from different ways that people have told the story. So some people focus on kurangai tuku being a monster, perhaps, and so you learn to be careful in the bush. Hopefully, you learn that, and to be respectful of the bush and the people and the creatures and the non-creatures and the non-people within it. So those are some lessons that you learn from there. And someone else tells the story about Hatupatu's bravery. So all of these are facets of the story, and I think you get a richer view from reading all of them. That kind of thread to rope metaphor, I'm always thinking of Maui slowing the sun or pulling up the North Island. He didn't do it alone. So, yes, he was the leader, I guess, but he was with his brothers. So it's the kind of many hands make light work kind of idea, I guess, that there's so much more richness if you include other people's minds, other people's ideas, other people's lenses on a topic, a story. So I don't know why you wouldn't, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm greedy.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. Yes.
Seems beautiful
and no.
to join and link those stories together. And
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of like whakapapa in a way too. Like we all are, from our ancestors, like generations and generations of people have come together to create what we are today. Same with stories. Generations of people have told those stories, and each generation has added a bit or taken away a bit. And it's not to say that any generation's story is the kind of definitive story. I don't think that would be right. Stories need to evolve with us to be useful. Those lessons, hopefully, continue to be useful. So it might be that we put them in a different setting to make them more modern, but the core lesson of the story is the same from way back when. Yeah.
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 Oh, that's beautiful. I like it. Thank you. It's refreshing to not have debates about definitive versions and the only ones, and this kind of singularity of authorship and ownership over ideas and narratives is kind of sticky/icky.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think it feels like you're excluding people rather than bringing them into the fold, into the story. Yeah. I just want to hear what other people think. Yeah. I'm interested in other people's stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you choose to make this story a novel with its very fun structure of non-linearity instead of a play, which you've written plenty of before, or it is kind of epic poetry in a way too. Or an oral narrative, a performance piece of some sort?
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been a play. I think it would have been a very long play. Very boring play.
It could be fun though to start from one side and different sides and ooh yeah.
For future scholars, they can look up what I was referencing then.
You can just say it if you want.
I could. Yes.
Was it the play we were talking about earlier?
It was a play we were talking about earlier. So, when was that? 2006, maybe? Yes, 2006. My sister and I put on a play for Stab in Wellington, and that was an experimental theatre festival. Yeah, festival was yearly. I can't remember if it's still going because COVID and all that stuff. But we had a big theatre space, a space for a theatre, and we had 2 plays that were running simultaneously, and some of the actors went through the doors to the other plays at the same time, and then halfway through the audience swapped, so they went on the other side of the wall to see the other play. So you could hear the play on the other side of the wall. You couldn't see what was happening, you could hear bits of it, and hopefully by the end of it you had a fuller understanding of what was happening in that space at that time. So yeah, I'm kind of playing with that too in Kurangai Tuku. So I could have done that, yes, as a play. I don't know why I chose to do it as a novel. I think when I first conceived of it, it was probably like the second novel I was going to write. But because it took so long, it ended up being the 4th novel that I've written.
Worth the wait. Or the work.
I needed that time, yeah. So I tell that story quite a lot which I think is good for other writers to hear, and particularly for young writers, because sometimes you see books in the bookstore and think, oh wow, that person just worked all the way through and they didn't have any doubts and it's on the shelf. That must be amazing to feel that way. No, full of doubts. So kind of halfway through, or maybe the second draft of Kurangai Tuku, I thought that I didn't have the skills to write the novel that I wanted to write. I just didn't.
Which part were you worried about? What the
all of it.
All of it. The structure, the sentence level, the rhythms of the language. Wow.
So when I first conceived of it, I'm laughing now because past me was so ambitious, and I love her for that. But anyway, so I wanted to write a novel that started at the beginning of time, which it does now. It starts in Te Kore. But yeah, the original plan was to stretch to the end of time.
I love this plan.
Yeah.
Please write that.
It's bloody hard to write that. I was like,
Especially
how
when your
do I
publisher
even do
is
that?
saying, please do it in 250 pages or less.
Yeah, please, just sometime this century finish your novel. So yeah, that was my original plan. It was too big. And I hadn't quite got her voice. I hadn't quite got Kurungaituku's voice. I guess my dirty secret is that when I was a playwright, and partly in novels too, I really don't like writing monologues, and I don't like writing in first person. I find it really hard to.
Which this novel is a lot of.
Yeah, this novel is like first person.
Yeah.
It is pretty much a whole 300 and something page monologue. So obviously I've gotten over that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I was thinking I don't have the skills to do this, that's one of the things I was pushing against. Is like, I don't like writing in this point of view. I don't know how to get there. Ideas. So I wasn't going to give up on the novel. I still wanted to write that story. I just needed to, hone my skills a bit. So I went and wrote Legacy, sort of in between. So, yeah, now looking back on it, looking at Legacy and Kurungaituku, I can see that I'm working out some of the ideas around, story sovereignty, about who gets to tell a story in Legacy. And I'm also working out some of the, how to, I guess, wrangle time. So Legacy is written, there are 3 time periods in Legacy. So it's a story about a contemporary teenager, or contemporary, like 2015, because that's when it was set, who goes back in time and lives as his great-great-great-grandfather. I should know that. I wrote it. One of those greats in World War One. So it slips between time. And there's also, through it, an oral historian talking to the grandfather. So that's in the 70s. So yeah, there's the 2015 strand, the 70s strand, and the 1915 strand. So just getting my head around how to use the tools I have in writing a novel to like bridge those gaps in time and how to tell a story through that. So yeah, I had to learn some more of my craft before I could finish Kurungaituku. Yeah.
And do you think the temporality element is maybe one thing that the novel is well suited for that maybe other forms of storytelling aren't? Or like, because its structure is so fascinating and delightful, and I'm just.
I think so. I think you can do that in other forms as well. I think, I mean, obviously film, radio drama, you can do it quite. Yeah. You can do some nice things with that. I guess the nice thing about writing a novel is that it's sort of self-contained as well. I just have me to contend with, rather than thinking like the practicalities when I'm writing a script for film or for TV, particularly for TV, or theatre, is I have to think of, okay, how much budget do we have?
Right.
How many people can I hire? Not that many people. Can I double up these parts? All that make it muddy, like for the audience. So there's all these sort of practical things that you're thinking of when you're writing with other people in mind that you don't really have to think about when you're writing a novel. I mean, you do have to work with publisher and editor, but that's kind of further down the track rather than up front when I'm writing a script. Yeah, I've got all these other things in mind, like how many people can I shove on the stage and still pay them well? Right. What space am I going to be putting it in? So what kind of crazy things can I do in that space? I might have to pull that back, but I can go for go for it in a novel. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah. There's something freeing about having the story about a character whose story sovereignty is at the core of the narrative, to be free just in this space to just have that character talk directly to you, the reader.
Yeah.
And it's feels so deeply intimate.
And that's the nice thing about first person. And I was bagging first person before, but that's the nice thing about first person is that you can be in that person's brain, which you can do on stage and on film with voiceovers but yeah, we're both rolling our eyes at voiceovers.
yes, we are.
Because it can be so clumsy.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me about, you've used the word storyteller quite a bit, and we're talking about also novelist you and playwright you, and you wear lots of hats.
I do.
Do you identify with one of those creative hats more than another? Like, would you say you're a storyteller or
I
not?
swap them over
author?
quite a bit now. Lately I've been leaning towards storyteller because I think it opens it up a little bit more. Because I think it's the mode of telling story, whatever mode you're telling it in, so whether that be oral or writing a novel or writing a film, those are all valid ways of telling a story. So I think writer, for me, just feels like you're writing it down, like it's on paper. So that excludes a whole lot of amazing people who are telling stories. That will probably change. Because, like my hair colour, which it seems to change. Like,
which is a fantastic pink right now.
It's a very hot pink at the moment, but it was platinum blonde not long ago. It will probably change on a whim. So in the past, I've been introducing myself as a playwright novelist, but because I haven't written a play, like a full-length play, in maybe 10 years, I've kind of swapped that over to novelist playwright at the moment. But yeah, who knows? It might be thing. It might change again.
Well, and the story of ourselves doesn't have to be fixed either.
True.
Just like the stories that we tell, it can be fluid.
I quite like kaituhi as well. So I don't know. But storyteller seems to encompass a lot of what I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the novel, it's clear that stories can create. They can kind of also mute voices. Stories can do lots of things. They seem very, very powerful in your hands in the narrative. Are there things this is maybe a totally bizarre question, it may not go anywhere. Are there things that stories can't do?
Wash the dishes?
Yes. God dog it. I wish they could do the washing.
Although that's not true. Because if you told a story about a robot, then that might inspire people to make that robot. So, I don't know, maybe stories can wash the dishes. We just haven't got there yet.
Yes, we haven't made it there in the story.
Yeah. I mean, we've got dishwashers. What am I talking about? But they don't load themselves.
I know.
Self-loading dishwashers is what I'm talking about.
That's what we need. More stories about that so we can create that, please.
Yeah, so it manifests in the world. I don't know. I don't know. What can't stories do? I don't know. That's hard for a writer because our lives are stories. So we just think stories can do everything, I think.
Yeah. That's sort of why I asked, because I teach podcasting through the lens of rhetoric, and rhetoric is very much a discipline that's very focused on its speaker's relationship to their audience. That the way you tell a story, the way that you give a speech is always dictated by the context around you, just like you said earlier, and who you're talking to and when you're talking to them, and what medium you're using and how long do you have, and you draw on all of those resources to make your speech or to write your piece that you're writing. But rhetoric, people have a way of sort of seeing everything as rhetoric. It is just sort of like I can imagine storytellers see everything as a story, and I'm always interested in like, where are the limits of this?
Are there limits?
Yeah, are there?
Should there be limits?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe if there aren't limits, maybe we're limiting ourselves by thinking that there's limits.
I mean, I think we are stories. We tell ourselves our own story all the time. Like, I'm getting up to do this, I've done this. People write in their diaries, that's the story of themselves. The way you dress is a story, like how you present yourself to the world. So everything is a story if you try hard enough.
And yes, and I love also the way that you invite the reader into Kurangai Tuku's story, right? That we're part of the creation of that story. And same with each other's stories as we go through our lives. We're also contributing to other people's stories as well as crafting our own.
Yeah, it's that thread thing again. We're all threads
Yes.
in other people's stories. Yeah. We're just the lead thread in our story.
That's it.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, for now.
Until someone else takes over the thread. Super duper. Can I ask you some questions about writing and speaking?
Okay, let's do it.
If you haven't heard, listeners, Whiti read, she is a spectacular reader. The rhythms of your language and the way that you crunch those consonants and open those vowels and linger in the pauses is just, it's mesmerizing. So tell me, but it's also really hard to write words to be spoken. And it's clear to me, I don't know if this was your goal, but it was clear to me that this is a story, this novel is one that wants to be heard as well as read.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you write for speech?
How do you do that?
It's hard.
It is hard. So, I very much set out to write something that sounded like you were being read to. So I set out to write something orally. Not orally, orally. Sorry.
Yes, that's an important difference.
New Zealand consonants, not consonants, vowels, though, we kind of get them mushed up together. Anyway, orally. So thinking about rhythm in particular. So a lot of my writing or rewriting of this, I read the whole thing aloud.
Amazing. I love that.
So I read it. I always say this to my students as well when they're looking at their work, to read it aloud, because you can instantly hear when something's not working. You hear it so much faster than when you're looking at it on the page. When you look at it on the page, you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's fine. That'll do. It looks fine. But yeah, as soon as you read it out loud, you will trip over where it's not working.
Yes.
You will hear it when you're getting bored with a passage, so you need to strike that out. Because if you can't read it out loud, then your reader has got less patience than you do for your work. So yeah. So part of it is just the work of reading it out loud and writing it to be read out loud. I guess, this is the kind of hard thing to teach when I teach writing for the stage, is dialogue is tricky, because to make it sound natural, you have to write it in a really unnatural way.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So normal speech, we have tics and we have fillers. So where there's things, we also don't always get to the point.
Yes.
Yes, very much so now. So we talk around things a lot, because a lot of times when we're talking normally to each other, we haven't figured out what we're going to say. So it takes us a while to get around to the point. So often people will go around the point and around and around and around. If you transcribe that exactly for the stage, it's so boring.
Yes.
It's so boring.
Yes.
So when I was a little baby writer, I had an internship at RNZ in their drama department, when they had a very big drama department. And my idea was to go out with some microphones and just capture people's conversations in cafes and things, and then transcribe it and make this sort of soundscape of just natural speech.
Like found poetry,
but
oh, I love this.
But found dialogue.
Yeah, found dialogue.
But it didn't work, because people don't talk in the way that's interesting and engaging, in the way that you expect in a play or a drama. So people don't talk in the way that makes it interesting. Unless you're in the conversation. Mostly. Some people are amazing conversationalists, but for the most part, people are just trying to find their way to the words. So yeah, when you're writing dialogue, you want it to sound natural.
Yes.
So that's the goal. But to sound natural, you do a whole bunch of unnatural things to make it sound natural. So in writing dialogue, usually the dialogue has a point. So people have an agenda, which when we're talking normally, you might not have an agenda. I mean, some people do, of course, but you might not in just normal speech. So when you're saying, have you got, pass me the butter, or have you got the toast? In normal life,
No agenda.
it's no agenda. You're just looking for the butter. But in a play,
On stage.
that might have like,
The butter.
have you got the butter? So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff underneath it that you don't have in normal life. So taking out all the ums and ahs, making sure that people have an agenda, and that they're playing off it against each other. So sometimes in conversations, the other person is not talking at all, and that's fine in a normal conversation, but on stage that needs to be a deliberate act. So silence speaks a whole lot of stuff. So yeah, all of these things that if you look at it on a page, it's like, oh, that doesn't look like normal speech, but yeah, when you hear it, it does. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's very different. Yeah.
Very
so
tricky.
It is very tricky, but I think you can develop an ear for it. So what I used to do, and sometimes still do, I'll admit it, is go on public transport and put on headphones, but not play anything, and just listen to people around. So I put on headphones so I don't seem like a creep when I'm like, because I can put on headphones and look like I'm listening to something intently.
When you're actually listening to them
people.
intently.
Yeah. So I can kind of lean to people, but she's just listening to a podcast. So she's not listening to me talking about, my affair with so-and-so or whatever it is. So I listen to people on public transport, and then I'm listening to their rhythm more than I am what they're talking about. Because everyone has like a fingerprint almost of the way they speak. So I try and put that into my characters as well.
Whoa.
So some people speak quite quickly.
Yes.
Some people can speak very slowly, and they use long, big words and long pauses. Or like you were saying before, they eat up the vowels for too long when they're speaking.
Oh, I thought your vowels were magnificent. That is praise.
It's praise. It's praise. So yeah, and try and replicate that when I'm writing. So for me, my goal when I'm writing dialogue for the stage or in a novel is that if you covered over the characters' names or the speech tags in the novel, you'd be able to tell who's speaking.
You should know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a rhythmic thing. Like, I don't get it right all the time, of course.
Yeah.
Because it's a journey, but that's my aim.
Yeah. So how did you find the rhythm of Kurangaituku's voice?
Yeah, it took a long time. It took a long time. So I think that was part of the struggle of writing, was finding her voice. Because it's not quite human, because she's not quite human. And it's not quite Māori, because she's not Māori. Her story is part of Te Ao Māori, but she herself isn't quite.
Right.
So yeah, trying to find it was hard in that way, and also trying to imagine what it's like to be her was really difficult. So in the first, in Te Kore, she's not anything. She is a spirit. She doesn't have a body.
Yes.
She doesn't exist. So in the story, she comes into being from the imaginations of other creatures. So first the birds and then humans. So even trying to think how does one tell a story if you don't exist? Well, you do exist, but you don't exist corporeally.
Right.
So even thinking about she wouldn't have vocal cords.
Yes.
So how would she make sound? And she doesn't. And is that a spoiler? No, it doesn't. She doesn't have a voice.
She doesn't know. Yeah. I almost said it, but yes.
I'm allowed to spoil it. She doesn't have a voice in the novel, like a physical voice in the novel. Obviously, she has a voice in the novel itself, because
metaphorically,
they're her words. But she doesn't have a physical voice. That would have made writing it as a play difficult.
Yes. Try to tell this without a voice.
Yeah.
Go.
This is a really complex inner life you have.
Yeah.
But you can't speak it at all.
That's right.
And I hate voiceovers, so
And
we're not
also
going to do
it
that.
starts in Te Kore. Go.
Yeah, go. To the end of time. You are also this giant, like, half bird, half woman creature who's always sore because her body's in flux. So, yeah, that would have been difficult. Not impossible, but difficult.
I see now how the novel gives you space to explore these things in other ways, that to build that whare that you talk about, that storytelling whare.
Yeah. Because
And
her not having a voice is really important to the story.
yes.
Because a big part of the story is her finding her voice through writing the novel, or having the novel being written, or her story being told. So, yeah, maybe it is only possible in a novel. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about trying to figure out the way that she communicates, because she's not human, she's not Maori, she's how does she speak? And there is something, I don't know if ethereal is the right word, but like the rhythms of the language, especially in those opening sections of both sides, whichever side you start on, are just, they are otherworldly in a way.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. So I'm lucky that Huia, my publishers, have got a really strong te reo Māori editing team, because I needed it, because I don't speak te reo Māori fluently. I'm a very enthusiastic learner and user, perhaps, so I was sprinkling te reo Māori words and concepts throughout this novel with abandon, and oftentimes they'd come back and go, I don't think that's the word you mean to use in that context, Whiti. So learning that was great. But someone on the team, and I can't remember who, Aroha Mai, because it was a long time ago, but pointed out that we should lose all the possessive S's on Māori names in particular. So instead of saying Hatupatu's eyes, we say the eyes of Hatupatu.
Yes.
So to do that, I had to rewrite things in a passive voice.
Yes.
What we would call a passive voice in the Western canon.
Yes.
But it's closer to how te reo Māori is constructed.
Yes.
So, in a weird way, the rhythms of Kurangai Tuku are te reo Māori, but in English.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that has influenced it a lot. Like I remember Tanya Roxburgh, who'd done a review of Kurangai Tuku. I was talking about that somewhere else, and she's like, that's it. She's like, I was trying to put my finger on why it felt so Māori but in English, and that's it. It was that
the shifting of the verbs and the objects around. Yeah,
had made it feel more like I was reading that. I'm saying this as Tanya now. I'm Tanya now. She said it made her feel like she was reading te reo Māori rather than English, but she didn't realise that, like, on a conscious level, it was subconscious. She was like, I don't understand why this feels right. So once I pointed it out, she was like, that's it. That's it. Yeah. So part of that was, that kind of offer from, going back to theatre sports, that offer from the editor to take out those possessive S's, because it's, tika to do it in that other way. But it actually supported what I was trying to say in the story as well.
Yes.
So it was like a really important point. I'm going, yes, that's what we need to do. It was a lot of work.
I can only imagine.
To go back and go, look at all those lovely sentences that I have to rewrite and then read out again to make sure that the rhythm is good. But once I had that rhythm, yeah, it was easier to do it. So, yeah, you did ask me before. I will answer your questions eventually. I get there in the end.
No. There's no rush. There's no beginning, middle, or end like the novel.
We're all over the place.
In the space.
So, yeah, it was hard to get into a rhythm, but once I knew it, then I could do it. So there's an exercise that I do with students that I do myself, and I get... if you come to my classes, you'll experience this.
Go to her classes. Do it.
But I guess it's a theatre sort of game where you create your character, and you know the biography of your character, so you know like how tall they are and how old they are, those kind of things, and who their people are and whatnot. And then I take everyone for a walk. So we go for a walk to a place, usually to a landmark. So maybe a 5-minute walk. And you can do this by yourself, you don't need a group, but sometimes it's fun to be with a group. And as we're walking, I get people to walk as themselves first, which sounds weird when I say it out loud, but to be aware of themselves as they're walking. So I'm asking them to think about their posture, like how would they normally walk? Do they walk upright or do they look down? Where in the group that they gravitate towards? Like, are you at the front, at the back? Would you rather have like gone off somewhere else? Maybe, I don't know. Where you walk from, so I walk primarily from my hips, so I kind of tip myself back a little bit, walk that way. And then we get to the meeting point, and I get them to sit down and think about their character and get them to walk back as their character. So thinking about the same things.
Yes.
So for Kurangaitoku, I'm quite short, so I'm like 163 centimetres, I think, ish. Maybe
That's excellent. I have no idea what that means in inches, but
5'4".
but everyone who listens will.
5'4".
Got it.
And Kurangaitoku is at least 7 foot.
Amazing.
If not taller. So yeah, I was on my tippy toes quite a bit. But I like to do that because I see the world a little bit differently. So I see the world looking up. She sees the world looking down. So yeah, there are things that I wouldn't catch that she would, perhaps. And things that I would notice that she wouldn't, and things that she would notice that I wouldn't. So I think it's a really useful kind of exercise to do. And rhythmically, like how do you walk? I think how you walk can also influence how you talk.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think people...
Because it's how you breathe, right, too?
Yeah, yeah, because you have to... Yeah. If you're a fast walker, you have to breathe a bit more.
Yes.
It's the same with fast talking, so you have to breathe in the same way. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's feeling that rhythm, like physically for me, is really helpful.
So even doing that theater exercise when writing a novel, did you have to like walk around on your tiptoes after you got done eavesdropping on the bus?
Yeah. That's what I do. I walk around. Yeah. And sometimes when I'm like describing faces and things, I'll do like the old cartoonist trick. So I've got the mirror and I'll look at my face and see what it's doing. Yeah. So hopefully there's no furrowed brows and all those kind of cliches that you often have of people describing a face. Yeah. I'll go make the face and like what's different and what can focus on to get the idea of a frown across. Yeah.
Beautiful. I like that.
So it's fun.
Actually, I didn't know that old comic trick. That's a useful one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I don't have a mirror by my desk. Apparently comics do.
Huh.
Like for cartoonists, I should say, probably. It's the more broad term. But yeah, you make the face, look in the mirror, and they would draw it.
Yes.
But yeah,
using
I try
words.
and describe it.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what other questions I have. You've taken me to places I didn't know we were gonna go.
I have a habit of doing that.
That's terrific. Yeah. Ooh. Speaking of writing and speaking, maybe this doubles up on things we've already talked about. But what for you is the relationship? A bit abstract. What's the relationship? How do you see the relationship between the written word and the spoken word?
Ooh. Oh, that's really interesting.
Are they exactly the same until you speak it? Or are they
know.
different?
I'm thinking of what you were telling me before about Laura Jean and Laura Jean doing her voices for her novel and having different shaped mouth to get the different voices. So years ago I wrote a poem that was similar about the shape people's mouths make.
Oh, wow.
When they speak. It was about O's. So, your O. So I can't remember what it was.
Love it.
It's probably very bad poetry because I'm not a great poet. But anyway.
I love the idea. I'm on board.
Because I think our shape, the physical shape of our face and our mouths does make a difference to the spoken word.
Yes.
Yeah. New Zealanders in particular. Before this, I was trying to loosen my jaw a bit because we tend to have like quite a closed mouth, and it's very tight in the jaw, and that makes our nice or not nice, depending on our accent, is apparently very sexy.
So we've heard.
I don't know if that's true, but yeah, because it's the way that we've held our mouth that makes our sounds. So yeah, I don't know. I like the idea that letters were originally, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I think, that letters are like a representation of what your mouth does when you speak. So like that's why the vowels are nice, round and open, because that's what your mouth is doing.
Yeah.
That's why O is shaped like an O.
I've heard that about the Korean language, that their characters, many of them often resemble the shape that your mouth makes.
Yeah.
Don't hold me to it, but so I've been told by a Korean friend.
That's a good story, so I'm just going to believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, that the body is the instrument for speaking words.
Yeah.
And text is a representation of that.
Yeah, because text came way later.
Yes.
We were telling stories for millennia.
Ages.
Not even millennia, probably more than millennia, before any kind of writing came along.
Certainly. Yeah.
So I don't know. Did that answer your question? I can't even remember what the question was.
Yeah. Interesting. It was about the sort of what's different between the written and the spoken word, but yeah, and I think that definitely answers it. It just made me think of the inverse question, which is like, where do they overlap? But I don't know that that's so. I don't know if that's an interesting question.
I don't know. Well, they have to, don't they? I guess.
Yeah, I just think that's the interesting thing. It's just so hard to write for speech. Whether podcasters are doing it or playwrights, or in this case, an epic poem of a novel that wants to be spoken and heard aloud. Like it's so challenging to do.
It really is, because it's, I guess, again, it's thinking about not just what you're writing, but what your reader or your listener is receiving. So, sometimes I talk about like having the idea of having like a big bag of like attention bucks, like money. So whenever someone comes to the theatre or a novel, they've come with this big bag of like expectations that they're going to love this. So they have all this money.
The attention money
that they're willing to spend on things. So you as a writer, I guess, have to make the decision where you're going to spend those. And so sometimes using that in a whole bunch of exposition that just makes your story go bleh, that spends a whole lot of attention bucks that you can't get back anywhere else. So sometimes that helps me when I'm thinking, am I doing this? Will this engage the reader? And especially for rhetoric, and I guess for speeches, the aim of the speech is to get people on board, to change their lives, to move something. So if you're not holding their attention, or if you are doing things to alienate them, then that defeats your purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't pander to people either.
No.
But yeah, that's why I think having that big bag of bucks idea works for me, because sometimes, yes, you will need to spend some of this goodwill to get your point across, but you need to make sure that's balanced in a way.
Yeah. You don't want to spend all that pandering.
Yeah.
No.
Can tell I'm not an economist, because I'm like, this is sort of how money works, I think.
Whiti's making all these beautiful gestures in here. The theatrical personality that you are is coming through.
I talk with my hands a lot. Yeah.
I do too. The only reason I'm like this is because I've hit the microphone way too many times
I know.
in
I'm
the
conscious
studio.
of like not punching the microphone.
Done a good job of not doing it, yeah. So maybe the last question I have is about vocal delivery, because I do love the way that you read written words. And you've worked in the theater before where you have to help actors say their lines. How, if you were giving tips to people trying to read some prose or poetry aloud or try to speak it, what would you tell them to think about, to do, to have in mind as they're trying to work on their vocal delivery?
Yes. Give yourself lots of time is the first thing. So make sure that you've got time to look at the thing you're reading and break it down. So give yourself a lot of time so you can read it several times, so you can feel where the parts that you need to emphasise are, and then write that down. So my copy of Kurangaituku that I read from has got all sorts of notes in it. When I first started reading my work for people, because it's like my work, and I'd get all like, I was fine on stage reading someone else's words, but when it comes to my words, I'd get freaked out. I used to write breathe.
Yes, mark your breaths.
Yeah, where I needed to on the page, and also slow down. So at the top of every page, it would pretty much be breathe or slow down. I'm better at that now, so I don't need to remind myself of that. But I do. I'll mark up what I'm going to read. So I'll put in where I'm going to pause. I'll underline the words that I'm going to emphasise. If there are words that I'm a little bit about the pronunciation, I will spell them phonetically in big words, and put. Usually I put where the emphasis is in that. What syllable I need to emphasise in capitals, so I know what to hit. But yeah, practicing a lot. So I don't memorise it because I don't have to.
Yes.
So why use that brain capacity if I don't have to? But I've read it enough that I know what's happening next. So if I kind of look up, which I do, it's good to engage with the audience. I look up at the audience from time to time. I won't get totally lost. I also use post-it notes in my novel so I can find where I am, because I recut my work for reading.
Yes.
To make it, you've got a bit more patience, I guess, when you're reading a novel than you do on a stage. So I recut my readings so they're nice and compact. So I need those post-its so I can find where I am. So yeah, make it as easy as possible for yourself when you're reading. Beforehand, warming up is really important. So I was saying before that New Zealanders have got very tight jaws. We do. So sometimes, as well as doing the normal vocal warm-ups, I'll either jam the heel of my hand into the part where your jaw, into that hinge, which hurts.
Yeah, we're both doing it right now. It's not
pleasant, but it does help loosen that, so you can open your mouth a bit more, and warming up your lips. And it all sounds very silly. Hopefully you've got somewhere like you can hide to do it, and you can do it and get warmed up. Also doing exercises to expand your chest.
Yes.
Yeah, because we tend to kind of close in on ourselves, particularly if we've been working on a computer. So things like arm circles, big arm circles. I saw an exercise recently, which I haven't tried, which I'm going to try, which is getting like two lacrosse balls.
Yes.
And it's like in a sock or something.
Yeah, like tying them together.
And then put them in like between your shoulder blades.
Whoa.
So you lie on it, and then you bring your arms. So you hold your arms out like at 90 degrees from your body, and then you bring your shoulder blades down on the lacrosse balls. Just to loosen all of that.
Yes.
So your chest is open.
Yeah.
So you can take a breath and like push through that. So I haven't tried that yet.
It sounds incredible.
It sounds incredible and very sore.
Yes, painful a bit.
Very painful.
I'm also really impressed that you know lacrosse balls. I use them a lot as a physio
Yeah,
on
'cause
my
they're hard and-
muscles. But
yeah.
yeah, they're like, for those of you who haven't heard of lacrosse, it's like a cricket ball, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit smaller than a cricket ball.
Yeah,
Kind of a tennis ball size, but like a cricket
harder
ball.
than a harder than a tennis ball, certainly.
So like cricket ball density,
Yes,
but tennis ball size.
there you go. Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about cricket to tell you about the size of the cricket balls.
They're a little bit bigger then.
yeah. Oh, super.
Wow, how did we get to talking about
I
balls?
don't know. Slippery slope, that one. But it was about breathing, all the things
Yeah.
you do to your body to shape it to prepare to speak well.
Yeah. If you're speaking in public too, I like to dress up.
Yes.
I like a theme. And part of that is for the theatrical experience, but also it kind of puts a buffer between me and the world. Like I'm taking on this persona of a person who's reading this book, or the persona of the character themselves. So sometimes I do that, and that helps me. I don't know if that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, it can change your posture, right?
Yeah.
The way when you play a character a little bit.
Yeah. And just make sure you're comfortable.
Mm.
That's the main thing. So I like to read standing up usually, because I feel more powerful when I'm standing up, I guess.
Yes.
So I can plant my feet and things. So yeah, find a way that you're comfortable, because the more you're comfortable, it'll come through in the reading.
Yeah, well, that's good. So yeah, maybe we can end at the beginning where we started, by going back to storytelling and sort of, there's this one beautiful quote that would love to hear you tell us more about. So you say the tui and the kaka sing different songs, but they both sing the truth.
Yeah.
And I love that. Tell us more.
Oh, thank you. Well, they do. Yeah, we've all got different songs to sing, but they're all our truths as well. So in that particular context, it was about how Hatupatu told his story that didn't include Kurangaituku. And Kurangaituku's story is kind of hinting that Kurangaituku is not a reliable narrator, and that she's going to be telling an anti-Hatupatu story, almost. But both stories are true, and together they're kind of more true. The truier, maybe. Get the truest version of the story by hearing lots of different things. But yeah, each person who tells a story, even if they're the opposite stories, they're still telling the truth. Yeah. This kind of idea of objective truth is odd.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm saying this as a person who studied law. It's very messy and yeah. But the kind of concept that there can be a truth is nonsensical.
Yeah.
Of course there can't be.
Capital
Everything.
teachers, no way.
Everything is subjective.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like your novel is suggesting that it's a richer way of understanding the world to combine those to thread and weave those truths together, those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at things from other people's perspectives is always going to make your experience richer. Even if you hate that person and you think they're wrong, you'll still get a different understanding about what had happened in that situation if you take into account their story.
Yeah.
And then just bitch about it to your friends.
Yes. Yeah. You can still do that
wrong.
too.
Absolutely wrong about that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for spending time today. I appreciated it.
It's okay. Thank you very much for having me here. It's been amazing.
I learned heaps.